This model is now going to get into actual modeling techniques for polygon modeling. So there are three different modes of modeling surfaces. We looked at NURBS surfaces and NURBS curves and polygons, and there's also subdivision surfaces, which is actually another product. It's called Mudbox, and it comes with Maya. It used to be a subdivision surface tool in the package, but then they pulled it out, created a whole software package. We're going to stick with polygon modeling techniques. And in this case, we're going to model a sign. So the first thing I want to do is set my project. And it's already been created. Then I want to bring in my image plane. And notice that my grid lines, I changed the color here, but my grid lines are still the same as the grid units that I set up previously. So every time, unless I change it, it will now be a setting in Maya. So every time I open up and create a new project and open up a new file, it will have these grid units by default. And I want to keep that. So I'm going to bring in my image plane, and it's been stored in my source images folder. I put the image, I found an image online of a sign that I want to recreate, and I brought it in to my source images folder, and I'm going to open that up. And we're only going to deal with the front view as reference. So the purpose of the image planes is to give you reference and guides as you try and model. So we can work with just one image in the front view. And this sign probably would be, so we know one of these boxes is 3 feet. So this might be a 4-foot tall sign, maybe 5 feet. And I'm going to position it up. And move it back so I can see what's going on in my viewports. And I'm going to add it to a layer. So display, create empty layer, add selected objects, and we'll give this a name. And I want to make this reference. So now I won't accidentally pick this, but it'll still be here for my view, for my guiding. Now notice up here, it said symmetry. So my symmetry is off right now, but we're going to make use of symmetry as we move forward with this model. So now I want to use a polygon cube. So I'm going to create a cube and start to scale this into position. So when you think of modeling non-organic shapes, let me do something here. So let's center this so it's modestly symmetrical. When you model non-organic shapes, they tend to be very geometric and very symmetrical. So you can work with those tools. Polygon modeling is a process, a thought process of planning your steps as you go, and the more experience you get, the easier it will be for you to see ahead what would be helpful. So what step to do first and what step to do second and so forth. So I'm getting this bottom shape set up, and then I'm going to add some divisions. So right now this is just a flat cube, and if I look at the inputs, the subdivisions are 1, 1, and 1. And the next step is I'm going to add subdivisions and build up in detail. So the trick to polygon modeling is add detail when you need it. And be careful about some of the tools. Understand the tools so that you're not adding extra detail in one area at the expense of another area. So what I want to do now is I want to create the lift and the arc for this. And also, I assume that this sign would be on both sides. So one sign would say welcome to, and the other sign would say you're now leaving, or something like that. So I'm going to add divisions in here. So for my width, I'm going to create 3. I want 4 divisions, and I want to keep a center line here. So I need that center line for some other things that I'm going to do. And the depth is 1. So because we're going to do front and back, we need this center line so that we can scale, we can extrude in and out. Now, what I can do is start to line this up and then build up here. So I know I want these lines to be on this edge. So I'm going to make use of my symmetry in World X and right click edge, and when I double click it goes all around the edge loop. So it's should click that and select that entire edge. You see how it went all around? And because I had World X symmetry on, it did it on both sides. And now if I scale this, actually I think we can move this. So moving will work in this case. I can move and line up this, this edge to where I want it to be, but it's doing the left and the right side the exact same dimensions. Now I want to build up here. So I know that this edge goes up. So I want to right mouse click, select face. And again, I have my symmetry on left and right. So it doesn't matter which side I pick, it's going to do the symmetrical pick selection on the other side. And in this case, I want to extrude this surface and then add some more detail to get the arc and that lift up. So edit mesh, extrude. Now because I have symmetry on, it's giving me one control manipulator, and that's fine for this, but in some other situations that won't work for what you're trying to edit. Now we'll go back to object mode. So now I need some more detail in here to be able to get this arch. So I can use a couple of different tools to insert some edge loops. So if we go into mesh tools, there's the insert edge loop tool, and there's also the offset edge loop tool. So if I click on offset edge loop, it will offset the left and the right side for the edges. That's helpful, but in this case, I know I need multiple ones, and I don't want to do this one at a time because I want them to be exactly even. So I can use the insert edge loop tool and look at the options. And let's set up some of these options. So it looks like I can have a number of edge loops. But to do that, I need to click on multiple edge loops. And let's say 4. Now when I insert edge loops, I can see on each side it gives me the same amount on each side. So let's try 2. Well, actually, let's do something different. So let's go back to Mesh Tools, Offset Edge Loop, and we'll create the first one. And we'll create the first one to come in here, to line up here. And I'm going to switch to object mode just to go back and forth to clean out the tool. That's just a personal habit. And now let's go back into our insert edge loops. And let's have multiple edges, and let's see what happens when we place 3 in here. So I think that will work. That gives me the detail to get this arc here. So we'll close out of that, and now I want to pull my edges up to get that shape. So we're going to keep this one in place. And we want to select edge. And I still want to keep my symmetry on for the X, because we're going to use both sides. And again, I want them symmetrical. And I hit the W key now, and I want to bring this up. And I'll do the same thing. Select the edge, and symmetry is on. And we'll do that one more time. And you can see now I'm starting to get the shape of the arc for my model. So I can bring this up. We'll go a little higher here. And if you notice, I'm now comfortable with my manipulator tools. So I'm middle mouse scrolling in and out. I'm using my mouse keys, my Alt left and Alt middle mouse and Alt right mouse to zoom in and out. I'm using my Shift pick. So if I want to select multiple pieces of geometry, multiple edges in this case, I'm holding down the Shift key, so I select one, and then Shift pick. And the reason I switched sides is so I could see, because the manipulator was blocking my view. So now I have an arc on the top to look like my model. And again, so this image is taken as a photograph that's taken with a certain kind of perspective, and it's only meant to be reference. It's not exact. So if I see something that I don't like that's not working that well, I can go in and fix it. So I'm not beholden to the image. It's only intended to be reference. So that looks a little bit better. That's a nicer arc. So I noticed that my inputs are now starting to build up over here. So I want to clean this up just in case it creates some problems with the history. So I'm going to go into Edit menu, Delete by Type, History, and all these inputs are now gone. And the next step that I want to do is I want to create this edge. So I'm going to use Extrude. But I don't want World X, I want World Z, because I'm going to make the front and the back match. So I select Faces, Shift pick, and now I have my front and back faces selected, and Edit Mesh, Extrude. Now, because I had symmetry on, the Extrude tool gives me only one manipulator, and that's not going to work very well. So I can see here that when I scale, I can't scale non-proportionally. So I need to have this even. So if I hit the R key, I can now scale non-proportionally and get a better lineup of my extrude. And I extrude it in on the same level. Then the next step we're going to extrude back, but we have to do a little bit of cleanup here. And I can hit the W key to move this also. So this is going in the right direction, but there's still some things that need to be cleaned up. So I'm now going to do that in the vertex level. So just click out of object mode, swipe click to vertex mode. Let's do edge, I think. So I'm going to use my edges and my vertices to make this more even. So I can bring that down. I can scale that out. And I have symmetry, so it's selecting the front and the back, and I still want to work with that symmetry. We're going to bring this down, and then let's do vertices. So we'll bring this one up. Bring this up. And now there's a really good tool that I can use, and it's the snapping. So for these, I want them to align here. So if I hold down the V key and I move the mouse up, it's going to align with the vertices that are right above it. So I'm moving and moving up. I'm selecting the vertice, holding down the V key. And if you notice that when I hold down the V key, it highlights this vertex snapping. So many of these tools up here can be accessed with quick key commands. And as you get used to them, they will become easy to flow in. So you can navigate in and out of the tools with your left and right hands. And now this is starting to line up and look pretty clean. And that's what I want. So that looks pretty even, and we're going to soften these edges with a bevel, but let's do some other extrudes first. So now I want to select my faces again, and it remembered the faces from the last selection. So if I don't change any face selections, it will go right to the faces that were last picked. And again, edit mesh, extrude, and this time I need the arrow key, and I want to push this back. And it's going to do the same thing front and back, which is what I want. So that's given me my lip there. And that looks pretty good. But we can soften these edges and make them a little bit rounder. So in this case, I'm going to delete by type history because I don't want to go back into any of those controls. And let's switch to World X and go for edge. So we'll do both sides here. And the tool we want to use for this is bevel. So edit mesh, bevel. And now it's created an angle, but if we give it some more segments, it'll round that out. So you can see that softened that edge. So for right now, that's okay. So let's do the bottom. Edit mesh, bevel. So we did 3. Let's do this one. Edit mesh, bevel, segments 3. And that's now softened the edges of our shape, looking more like the reference as we go. Now this bottom sign, so we're going to add the type in, and let's see what this looks like in the front. So I can add in some extra geometry here. And you want to keep your geometry as quads as much as possible. So one thing that happened when I did the bevel is it created a triangle here. And some triangles are okay, but you want to model in quads as much as possible. So some of these extra tools created geometry situations that you might need to fix later on. Now, I didn't need to use bevel. I could have added geometry in and then modified it like I did here, but it's okay for this project. Let's add some type in here. So let's go into Create, Type. And when you do that, it opens up an attribute editor and a type node. And in this case, we're going to do one side and then we'll copy it to the other side. So I'm not going to mirror this particular function. So in the attribute editor, I can modify this type. I want it to say Jefferson City. And let's kind of move it to the front here. That's not the right font. I don't know what font was used in the reference, so I'm going to look for a serif font, something that has edges on it. That's probably okay. And let's bring it down. So I can scale this up, so I can change the size of it and also the tracking. So let's bring this in. And we're using a model for this because this looks like it's embossed instead of actually texturing on a surface. So you can change some type items, font size, tracking, and kerning, as long as this is in the type setup. You can go in and change the geometry. You can change the texturing and the materials, and you can do a few things in here. One thing that I want to do is change the extrude depth, and notice if I click on it again, the attribute editor opens up. And I want to make this depth a little bit more. I want this to go deeper in here. So the nodes in this attribute editor are everything that I can change in here. If I go all the way down to the end, actually it's type extrude. If I go to the extrude, I can change the extrude option. So I can make this deeper. I can change the extrude divisions. So I don't need 4. I can bring that down to 3 or 2. Extrude offset. And let's put this in here like that. Now, it doesn't allow me to isolate the individual letters to change their font. So I can't highlight this and then change the font. It will change it overall. So what I have to do is, if I want to do that, I can do that at the component level. So I'm going to look for vertex and click and drag all these vertices here and all of these vertices here. And I'll just scale this up. Let's do them one at a time. And again, so we're going to turn symmetry off, so it's giving me some unpredictable results. So I want to bring this up and then move it up a little bit. Then do the same thing for the C. Right click, select all of this geometry. Let me zoom in here. So I need to create some workarounds with this particular look that I'm trying to match. You can import, it will use the fonts that are on your computer, so you can import a particular font if you want to use something exact. And I'm right mouse clicking, swiping, and this is still too big, so let's go back into the attribute editor. And let's bring our font size down. That's about right. Looks about right. And then we have the welcome to. So here, let's go in and edit, delete by type history. So let's clean all the history off of this. And I want to mirror this front and back. So I can use my duplicate options. Edit, duplicate special, and I want to mirror along the Z axis. So we're mirroring here. -1, apply. So now it's mirrored, centered, and if I move it, so it mirrored it based on its own axis. So let's go back and look at that. So the pivot point is right here. I could center the pivot, so I could change the pivot if I hit the insert key, hold down the X key. I can move the pivot to the grid and hit insert again to toggle out of that. Now if I duplicate, it's going to mirror it on the exact side. And we can flip this. So let's flip. Let's modify center pivot, and let's go. So yes, when you use this duplicate, it creates an inverse of your object, and that can create problems with some tools like blend shapes, because if you're trying to match it, it will invert out and then bring it back. So you have to be careful when using this tool for what you're working on. But this is just a still image, and now we have the front and back, Jefferson City, Jefferson City. And we want to say welcome to, and you are now leaving. So we'll create type again. And this is welcome. Welcome to, and that's sort of an italic font. That'll work. Let's bring this up here and bring the extrude out, type extrude. And this one needs some extra kerning work, so let's go back to our type node and fix the kerning. So we'll bring this in. That should be okay. it's overlapping. So I'm going to actually manually fix this. So I'm going to select the vertices, hold down the shift key, oops. Hold down the shift key, get these, and let's bring this in. And let's just bring this in. So this isn't a solid kind of formula, but I'm trying to match the look and feel of my reference. And then the back one will say the same. So this was italic, so let's do that again. Create type. You are now leaving. And that was italic. Now, since I typed this in the front and I want it to be the back, I'm just going to rotate it around. So we'll go negative 180. You can reset these values. So let's bring this up here. Give it some depth. Go back and change the kerning. And let's turn off our image plane. So you are now leaving. Welcome to. And then the last thing is I'm going to create this little embossing here. So let's save the file. With an iteration. So this will be 01. And now I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup. So when you get to certain stages, it's a good idea to clean up your file so that you don't have inputs that may create issues. So I'm going to select everything in here, shift pick, edit, delete by type, or I can do delete all by type and history. That got rid of all of the inputs. So now I can't go back in and edit this with the attribute editor anymore. So you can see that it's now, all of those tools are now gone. But that's okay because I don't want to. I don't need to do that. And we'll name these things. Jefferson 1. Oh, let's call this front. Back. Welcome to. Leaving. And sign. So this piece, I could create it as an embossed geometry, and I would follow the same steps by creating a shape. I could probably start with a cylinder and then match things up. But in this case, I'm going to make this part of the texture map so we can understand the process for texturing. I think there was enough in this exercise to work on. And now let's put some basic materials on this so we can work with the texture. So if I click on my hypershade, so the type, it comes in with its own type nodes. So if I select on this type blend and say select objects with materials, it's showing me that that object is that material. And that's the back one. So that's fine, we can keep that. I know the color is a little bit different, so let's change the color. So on this one, let's make this a color that's closer to and say it's the same in the back, and the welcome to is the same. Now I'm just going to put a basic material on here because this is going to be textured. We're going to texture map this part of it. So right click, assign new material, and we'll give it a blend. And we'll make this color, we'll make it, so if we change it to blue, everything's blue. This is going to change later on, so that's fine. Because this, so even though I put a material on here, and I use blend, it could be Fong, it could be a Lambert, there's a little bit of reflectivity. This might be a brushed metal. So you want to create the materials to match the material of what something's made out of, and then decorate it in the texturing process. So this stage, and we can name these materials as well. And if something already has a name, it's going to give it a number after that. This one, and so forth. So let's stop here for the modeling part of this, and let's move on to the texturing. So I'm going to save this again, and we'll give this another iteration. We'll call this O2 and save as. And now let's move on to putting UVs on here and unwrapping this and adding a texture more specific to what this would look like.